After 5 weeks, it seems we can't exhaust the depth and breadth of pride and its influence on us. We have more to learn. Join us today in listening to Pastor Bartlett.
Paul informs the saints that the secret of joy, in spite of what persons may do or say, is the submissive mind. Verse 3 is the key verse. Instead of being motivated by selfish ambition or vanity, each of you should, in humility, be moved to treat one another as more important than yourself. Nothing in the church should be done with a spirit of contention. Christians are forbidden to do anything as the mere result of strife. We are forbidden to secure anything over others as the result of dark schemes and plans formed by rivalry or by the indulgence of angry passions or with the spirit of ambition. We are not to do anything for the purpose of showing that we have more intelligence, talent, or zeal than do others. Sadly, this rule is often violated in the church. How often do we see believers attempting to outdo each other to see which of them should be the greatest? There is no holiness or godliness in such efforts. Never should this motive be allowed to influence us. Self is not to be foremost. Selfishness is not to be the motive. This admonition affects all of us. Is there any of us who does not in some respect desire to be in the spotlight? Is there any preacher or teacher who has never desired to demonstrate how good a minister of the gospel he or she is? Which singer or musician is there in the church that does not have to battle sometimes not to be overcome with a desire to receive commendation from men? We could go on and on. The truth is that if everything could be taken out of human conduct, even Christian conduct, which is performed as a result of selfish ambition or vanity, very little would be left. Humility means modesty or lowliness of mind. It stands opposed to the pride which would lead us to strive for the ascendancy or to receive the praise of men. The only true antidote for these faults is humility. This virtue consists in estimating ourselves according to truth. It is a willingness to take the place which we ought to take in the sight of God and man. When we have the estimate of our own importance and character, which the truth should produce, it will motivate us to serve others sincerely and consistently. In Philippians chapter 1, it is Christ first. And in Philippians chapter 2, it is others next. Paul, the soul winner in chapter 1, becomes Paul the servant in chapter 2. It is important that we understand what the Bible means by humility. As we noted earlier, the humble person is not one who thinks little of himself. He simply does not think of himself at all. Humility is that grace that when you think you have it, you have lost it. According to Romans 12:3, the truly humble person knows himself or herself and accepts himself or herself. For by the grace given to me, I say to every one of you, not to think more highly of yourself than you ought to think, but to think with sober discernment, as God has distributed to each of you a measure of faith. New English Translation. Genuinely humble persons yield themselves to Christ to be his servants and to use what they are and what they have for the glory of God and the good of others. The key idea in Philippians chapter 2 is others. Paul is trying to get the Philippian saints to turn away from themselves long enough to focus on the needs of others. I am reminded of a story concerning the founder of the Salvation Army, General William Booth. It was Christmas Eve 1910. General Booth, who was 81 years, was by this time an invalid and nearing the end of his life. His health was so poor that it was not possible for him to attend the organization's annual convention. Someone suggested to the general that he send a telegram to be read at the opening of the convention to the many Salvation Army workers who would be in attendance as an encouragement to them for their many hours of labor serving others throughout the holidays and the cold winter months. Booth agreed to do so. However, funds were limited and telegrams charged by the word. So in order to ensure that as much money as possible would go to help the needy, General Booth decided to send a very short message. He searched his mind and reviewed his years of ministry, seeking a few words to summarize his life, the mission of the Salvation Army, and to encourage the workers to continue on. When the thousands in attendance were told that he would not be present, a wave of sadness and disappointment swept over the crowd. General Booth's speech was the highlight of the conference every year, and everyone eagerly anticipated it. Gloom and pessimism swept across the convention floor until the moderator announced that Booth had sent a telegram to be read at the start of the first session. He opened the message and read out loud to the crowd, "Others," signed General Booth. It was only one word, others. That was it. But one word was all that was needed. Those 6 letters had reminded the crowd what was at the very heart of the charity: serving others, putting the needs of people before their own, not focusing inward, but looking outward to serve, love, and give to others.
Let us continue to measure where we are with pride by a reflection on these questions. How do we view others? How often do we think we could do a better job, or at least we're not as bad as others? Are we concerned about the needs of others and prioritize them above our own? How do we respond to failure, suffering, or being passed over? Until next time, think on these things.